Where is he? Where is Bill Watts? Where is my father, that egg-sucking dog? Hola, amigos, it's Will here from Will's Custom Figures, coming at you today with a big bad breakdown of none other than Cowboy, Bill Watts, and Dory Funk Senior head sculpts. So please, guys, sit back and relax while I talk you through why and how I made these figure heads and all the details in between. So first things first, why did I make them? Wow, for anybody that doesn't know, this is the father of Dory and Terry Funk, man, rest in peace, legend. And of course, this is probably the father of Jim Ross, really, a lot of people would say, and one of the all-time greatest promoters, controversial promoters in professional wrestling, Cowboy Bill Watts. So where do I start? I don't know. People tell me if I'm wrong in the comment section below, but I don't believe either of these guys have ever had their own action figures or head sculpts or whatever made of them, and they're well deserving. You know, I think Cowboy Bill Watts, I believe, is still alive. Unfortunately, old Dory Funk Senior passed away many moons ago. However, I wanted to try and immortalize these guys, so here's a little bit about how I did it, the skills, the techniques, the paints, and all the little details. And here we go. I thought I would start with Dory Funk Senior as a first example. So let's just zoom in a little bit. Looking good, looking good. Okay, what did I do to make this head sculpt? Well, first things first, I've got to make an original. So I'm looking at black and white photos. I'm looking at images that my customers sent to me and all these other things. And then it's a case of using clay. So I tried to get a head sculpt. I didn't want to use... Here he is. Here's his son, good old Terry in the background. I didn't want to use a Terry Funk head sculpt to start working on Dory Funk Senior's head sculpt because I thought they would look too similar. So I've had a look through my figure collection and I found a Wahoo McDaniel head sculpt. That's obviously not going to be good though. So what I did is I cut off the top of the head. Okay, I then used clay to smooth it over so you've got a nice bold noggin. I've then extended the eyebrows, the nose, and the goatee a little bit, and also made a nice little hairline receding all the way back here. And after I've done that, I'm checking my customers happy, that I'm happy with the expression and everything else. I don't do anything like painting or anything yet because this is something that the guy doesn't want to be fragile. When it's clay, things are often fragile. If you've seen any of my Pokemon videos, you'll always see me saying I've moved house and this figure's cracked and all these other things. So let me just zoom out here. Here we go. What I get is a party cup. So for anybody that has children or anybody that doesn't, you get those little plastic cups. And a good friend of mine, Rob from Figure 4 Customs, he actually showed me how to do it. And I put the head sculpt into the plastic cup. It's then a case of mixing this, which is silicone, mixing it together with a catalyst, and then, hey presto, 24 hours later, you have yourself a mold. At the point you've got a mold, you have to have basically cut out the original clay one, which is more than likely trash at this point. You're not going to be able to use in future. As you can see, I've had to use a scalpel here to cut inside. But by doing that, it leaves me with a lovely little cast. And then I can make as many of these Dory Funk Senior heads, or Kevin Sullivan, as you can see on the left, or Linda McMahon head sculpts, as you can see on the right, as I want to. Now, after I mix the two parts together of the resin, I get a very hard plastic resin, as you can see here with Linda McMahon and Kevin Sullivan. I'm just going to show you very crudely by hand, so I do apologise if it's not the greatest quality. But you can see Linda McMahon has all these little issues. So she's got this little hat, this little ring, which is the ring that I cut it out of here. Pop. Okay, so what I've done is with this Dory Funk Senior head sculpt is I've cracked that off, as you can see. Cracks off quite easily. Sometimes you need to use a hacksaw. Sometimes you'll need to use a Dremel drill. Crack that off. So actually she's got a bit of a hole there into her head now. And it's then a case of getting clay and filling up the little holes. So if I just use Linda as an example, let me just zoom in. There we go. So you can see there's a lot of little flaws and mistakes here. So she's got one on her chin. So I'll apply a little bit of clay on. And it's then a case of just smoothing that out. There you go. That's completely filled in now. And that chin would be good to start painting if I was going to. I'm not going to do too much. I'm just going to show you the nose as an example. There we go. The nose is now filled in. and that would be all good to paint. Doesn't mean that when you paint that it's not going to have little imperfections and little holes and gaps. As you can see, this is the front of the hair, which I've just cracked away. Easy for me to say. There we go. So just be a case of putting that in, a nice big bit of clay, then getting my sculpting tool, here it is, and then smoothing that out, and then creating a little bit of hairline and flow for the hair to make it look nice and even. So there we go. Beautiful. So I'm part way there of fixing the Linda McMahon head, which I will be putting on my eBay, and people can message me and request if they want to see that. Let's zoom back in here on Dory Funk Senior. So as you can see here, I've painted him in full. Now I've used a lovely set of paints. I always mention these guys. I've used this Citadel Kislev Flesh. I've used that for the whole base colour. I've then added in little highlights, say like around the banks and the cheeks, using Cadian Flesh Tone. I've then used a mixture of greys and browns, such as this. Here we go. This is a nice grey that I've used, sorry, a nice brown that I've used. Here's another brown. And I've mixed it in with Stonewall Grey, which I don't have here at the moment. And once I've done that, I've painted all the hair. It's a case of doing the eyes. Now, the eyes are not easy. It takes a long time to work on the eyes. I am going to do a video very, very shortly coming up with the eyes. But one of my finishing touches is always gloss varnish. Whatever I do with the eyes, I paint it basically in 5 or 6 steps, I think it is. So firstly, I'll do the whole thing black. Then I apply white in the middle to do the actual eyeball. It's then a case of doing the iris and the pupil, and I always finish it off with a tiny little dot of white, as well as this gloss varnish. And this stuff really, really does go a long way, and is very, very useful, especially to making things look a little bit more real. You can see, look, his lips glisten a little bit, and I'm super, super happy turning something like this Kevin Sullivan head sculpt, which is, you know, really, really leaves a lot to the imagination, into something that can actually be sold and used on a custom figure. Now, upon filming this video and putting it under a lot of light, I can see there's 2 tiny, tiny, tiny little holes. So I'll put a tiny bit of clay there, and I'll just rub that in. There we go, filled that in, and there's a tiny little hole here on the eyebrow. So I'll do the same thing. Just try and rub a little bit of that clay in there, and as you can see then, that pretty much covers it up, so you can't see any more of the faults. And here we go, guys. Here is Cowboy Bill Watts, looking a little bit happier and a little bit more content than what we're used to seeing him on the old school 80s and 90s wrestling, like Mid-South Pro Wrestling and the UWF. Now, for anybody that doesn't know Cowboy Bill Watts, he was basically the mentor for Jim Ross. He was a promoter in WCW. He did so many things in professional wrestling, and he was one of the greatest minds in the business. He also came up with some crazy rules and was quite controversial, and yeah, definitely a polarizing figure for any wrestling historians. But that isn't about this video. This is about how I made this head sculpt. So I made this head sculpt. I had a look through my fodder drawer again, found a head that I liked that was very, very similar. Again, like the previous video with Dory Funk Senior, I had to completely remove the top of the head and then start sculpting again. I changed the nose size a little bit, added a little bit of weight onto that using good old Super Sculpey clay. And here's a nice little lump of that, so you can see here. And this is my all-time favorite tool, this one here. I love this tool. You've got this end, which is sort of like sharp and gets you decent edges. And you've got this one, which is really nice for pressing and molding. But pretty much every single Pokemon, Marvel, DC, wrestling figure you can see on this page has been made using that technique. And this is probably my second favorite tool, this one here. So I use this to make glasses, as you can see across the forehead, and all these little things. It's a great tool, especially when making glasses. So I've added weight onto the cheeks. I've also then blended the hair, as you can see, all the way around using this tool here. I've used this and blended that clay head sculpt before making a silicone mold and then a resin cast all the way around, so he is balding. And that's what I love about this, doing Will's Custom Figures, man. I get some really, really cool requests, and Cowboy Bill Watts is somebody that I never thought I'd be making, but I'm very, very happy to have been making. Now, once you pop the silicone mold out, you get the resin cast that's beneath it, like this Linda McMahon one I was showing you earlier. I've actually filled the top of the head now. You've got to look for all the little imperfections that are all over it. Now, one of the big imperfections, when you pop it out of the mold, you can see this is a crease line just down the side here. And that isn't going to come out with any clay that I use or anything else. I'm going to have to use a Dremel drill on that. And once I've used a Dremel drill, that'll be nice and smooth and all good to go with painting. I've pretty much rectified all the little details that were wrong with Linda McMahon's head at the start of the video. And what I would do is as well, with regards to the hair and the hole that was there previously, I'd use the hair that is there and I would score across and slowly start to add in more and more detail to that hair, as you can see. So with these sort of like holes and gaps, it's okay, but then when you need to remove plastic, it does get a little bit more difficult. So that's why I use my Dremel drill on there. So let me just add in a few more. There we go. That is probably enough. Now, with regards to painting, I'm just going to move good old Cowboy over here. It does get really, really challenging to paint, especially on top of like fragile things like glasses and getting all the little details in there. But like I say, mixing paints and all these other things has just been made so much easier by using Kislev Flesh. And I'm going to put on a quick layer of that colour just so you can see how it really does bring somebody to life. So just got a little bit of this out here. And here's good old Linda. Let's apply a little bit of that on, probably a bit too much on this brush, which is absolutely fine. So once I've done a nice little layer, put that there. I've got enough actually to do good old Kevin Sullivan. And you will see I've not filled in the holes on Kevin Sullivan. So you will see that it actually, by adding a layer of colour on there, it actually shows you all of the little imperfections and details that you need to rectify before completing the figure. So look at that already. Even though this has holes in the ears, holes in the nose, holes in the eyebrows and everything else, that's adding a hell of a lot of realism onto good old Kevin Sullivan's head and onto his face. I really love that. What a perfect skin tone. And then after that, I would go on to add in multiple different layers and try and add in some colour in with the Cadian flesh tone around the eyes and the bags and things like that, especially for your older people. And these being two more senior people that I'm making here today. There we go. So it doesn't have to be perfect first time. The paint takes quite a long time to dry. And once it's done like that, I'll probably apply at least another layer, if not 2 layers, to this Linda McMahon head sculpt, just of flesh tones. And then I'll start painting details like the hair. Okay, so now that's done, you may be wondering how I make the glasses. So the glasses I make in 2 phases. Well, you could argue 4. So I'll again get the Super Sculpey clay, but this time I'll roll it into a really, really thin piece of clay. You can see it's almost as thick as the top of his glasses. Hook it over one ear, roll it around to the other ear, and hook that round as well. Don't even worry about the bottom bit. And then what I'll do is I'll firmly push using my fingers onto the sculpt like this, all the way across around the ears to make sure it is attached on. And at that point, I've got one big line from the top of one ear to the top of the other ear. I'll then use this tool here to slice across, leaving the perfect line that I want. I'll then do the same thing underneath, same thing. Make sure I'm happy with the first line. Then a case of rolling or using the excess to make like a W sort of shape, attaching it on the nose, in the centerpiece of the nose first. And then when it's sort of like this, I'll give you an example. I'll then hoop it down and then back up and attaching it where the nose is and then attaching it to the top of the eye. I'll then do the same this side, so it creates sort of like a W. Again, pushing it firmly down and then using my tools. I wouldn't use this tool for a straight line this time. I'd use this one and really dig away, making sure that there's not too much clay on there because you don't want it to completely ruin the sculpt and you don't want the glasses to look a bit silly, but making sure it's left me with that. Now, it does involve a lot of practice. If you're interested in doing it, I can do a video where I actually finish and complete a set of glasses because glasses are one of my top questions that people ask me. How do you do the glasses? How do you get them looking real? Even from seasoned customizers. So yeah, I hope this video has been educational. I'm really, really happy, again, with the Vallejo paints and applications on here. I've used greys first, and I've then used your likes of your Beastie Browns by Vallejo, Especially love the leather brown by Vallejo as well, and then doing little layers with obscure colours like this one. This is Iraqi sand. And I do actually have, this is bone white. That's a good one for using on grey hair as well. And again, with the eyes, it's sort of about a 6-layer process. Completely black first. Let me just see if I've got a brush. Here is a nice fine brush that I got off Amazon. So I'll do the whole thing black, then even finer, the white. And then I would go back and apply the pupil and the iris, as well as a little white dot. And then using, to finalise things, the gloss varnish. And here we go, guys, bringing this video to a close here. That is the end of this sort of watch-along, how-to, tutorial, whatever you would call it. I do apologise that I can't film the whole thing from start to finish, the whole process. And I actually am going to push myself to do that. It's quite labour intensive. I've got 2 children. However, it is worth it. I start my new job in January, so I'm literally working very, very hard between now and then on a bunch of different customs. As you can see, just some of the tools, everything from the silicone, I haven't shown you the resin, to all the sculpting tools, the paint brushes, the paints that I use, 2 examples of what the molds look like when they come out and how to fix them. And then, of course, onto none other than the star of the show, good old Cowboy Bill Watts and Dory Funk Sr. So guys, if you are interested in how I'm going to use these, here is a few different ideas that I would use when using the physiques. And here we go. I would be using, for these 2 figures, if I was finishing them, probably a Jim Neidhart, because you can see the trousers are nearly already finished. I just have to add on the bottom of the trousers over the boots there. Or I'd be using this, which is a good old IRS body type. And you can see this has already been battered and played around with quite a bit. It leaves a lot to the imagination. Or maybe even a good old Hacksaw Jim Duggan. You can see Hacksaw Jim Duggan with this head on top. Oh my God, this would look absolutely brilliant. Let's just see how it would look if I was to put on. Yeah, there we go. There's Dory Funk's head. Maybe if he was going to be looking a little bit old school like that, I could get a wrestling physique. Maybe something Metal style, Metal Elite. Let's just move this up a little bit. So here he is. Here is his father's head on there. I'm not going to remove the figure. It's my son's figure, but you can see that this would fit on really, really nicely if I was to use it in a Marvel Legends figure. And with that being said, guys, thank you so much for watching. What's next for this channel? I've got lots of Marvel Legends. I've got lots of how-tos. I've got lots of different figures that I'll be finishing, including Kevin Sullivan and Linda McMahon. Here's a Linda McMahon body that I'll be using. So I've got to drill this down, use my Dremel drill to get rid of the bottom, make sure she stands perfectly, apply the head on top. Here's a little sneak peek. Just remove a bit of blue tack. So, oh yeah, a little bit of Linda McMahon. That's going to look good. So, yeah, I've got lots and lots of stuff coming. And just before I leave, guys, let me know in the comment section below if these 2 were having a wrestling showdown. Who would you give it to? Which is the best head sculpt? Which is the most realistic? Which one do you like the most, or would you like to see in your collection? And from myself, from Cowboy Bill Watts, and of course from the legend Dory Funk Sr., please like, comment, subscribe to me on Facebook, Instagram, and here on YouTube. It has been a pleasure getting to spend the last 15 or so minutes with you. I hope it's been educational, and I cannot wait to see and show you guys what's coming next in 2025. Adios.